Another episode of Slow Mesh. Jesse, we're getting through this season, man. It's already, what, week 6?
Week 6, man. It's been fun. It's last week, I think, in the preseason, you read all the athlons and the various magazines and whatnot. They all had week 5 kind of circled as kind of the, I think, preeminent weekend of the college football season based on how loaded the slate was. And damn if it didn't deliver. I mean, from Friday night to, it looked like Squirrel White got stomped. And he thankfully didn't. But, with the field rushing at Florida or Virginia, upsetting Florida State to what Arizona State, continue to kind of play with the rabbit's foot late at night on Friday to then what we saw Saturday. That was some, not suitable for work stuff that Notre Dame did to old Sam Pittman in Arkansas. And then, the afternoon stuff, I'm sure were kind of white knuckling it maybe a little bit with Tennessee and they were able to survive. And then what we got in the nightcap. So excellent weekend of football. We're now 5 weeks in. I think we know a hell of a lot more about these teams, or we can start making some more definitive maybe declarations. And yet at the same time, I think what we're going to kind of tease later in this, episode, I think for the SEC specifically, it's just kind of a Rorschach test for what do you see with each of these teams, because I think it's just kind of a car crash. There is no rabbit this year, whether it's everyone's chasing a Georgia, everyone's chasing a Bama. No, I think it's really like on a given Saturday, who you play and who you can beat.
Yeah, see, you said you think we learned more about these teams. I think I came out of week 5 with a couple more questions. Like I thought I knew Georgia and Alabama.
We have more data points, I guess. Yeah. Maybe that's fair.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I feel like I have a couple more questions. Because Alabama, that was the big game of the weekend. That one was surprising to me. I was – but then at the same time, I came out of the second half kind of like I did last year in the Georgia-Alabama game. Now, a different vibe in terms of, 2024's edition being high-scoring, explosive plays. The 2025 edition wasn't that, but it was another one where Georgia won the second half, but couldn't make the actual clutch plays to win. They held Alabama scoreless, but, Kirby just, Kirby with some questionable decision-making combined with Georgia players kind of pissing down their legs on some, the deep pass that should have given them the lead late in that third quarter, early fourth quarter, whenever it was. Like those things just kind of surprised me. And now I look at Georgia and I'm like, are they as good as I thought they were? Is it just Alabama? Is it just the mental block? Because look, Tennessee fans, we know Tennessee's been on the wrong side of a couple of those. Like Florida, just never going to beat Florida. Eventually you do. Georgia, just never going to beat Georgia. Still ain't been able to really do it. Still ain't been able to really make those clutch plays. And Alabama, are they legitimate? Have they quelled all the concerns that people had about them? Have they answered those? Do you still have those question marks about them? I don't know. How do you feel coming out of that game about those two teams?
Well, I think for Alabama, and I wrote about this at Surrender Cobra, I think that they found a guy in Ty Simpson. You had a lot of questions about him coming out of that Florida State game. I was someone that was a little more optimistic in the preseason. I guess I can say never late, just early, because it certainly didn't look great against Florida State. But even coming out of that game, John, the kind of bigger takeaway from some of those Alabama insiders was that it's not that Ty Simpson didn't know where to go with the football or was turning over the football or was making grave mistakes at the line of scrimmage. It's just that he was late. It's like he just wasn't seeing it right. He wasn't making the progressions and the checks fast enough. And against Georgia, the man was a maestro. Especially on third down. It was like every time they needed to come up with a big play, he made it. He made a couple with his legs. He obviously found Ryan Williams. He was, Gio Bernard. And he was just throwing dot after dot after dot. And the end numbers didn't look excellent because, again, Alabama didn't score in the second half. Georgia's able to adjust just like they did a year ago. But I think coming out of that game, Alabama's got to feel we do still have some questions, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's some real questions about the Tide. Can they stop the run at all? They certainly couldn't really on Saturday against Georgia. Can they run the ball? Not really, but they were committed to it enough that at least on the final play of the game, Georgia had to respect that play action. What, lo and behold, Simpson's able to do that pirouette bootleg and convert the play. But I don't think they have a question at quarterback. So at least the Tide know that, in my opinion. For Georgia, is the defense just mid now? I don't know. But certainly, like, the whole thing of, like, hey, let's just keep getting down in these games and having to come back and rally, probably not a winnable strategy, you know, if you're trying to win a national championship or an SEC championship. So that's a concern. I also think that, like, some of the game management stuff with Kirby, he has been up and down. Typically, he is pretty sound when it comes to going for it, you know, vis-a-vis the analytics and the metrics. I had no problem with Georgia going for it. You know, there at the end, you're down there, you have some momentum. I think it's less process versus result, and more it's kind of like when you add in the context of the situation, having Cash Jones there instead of Bowens, who had been so good, the running back the whole afternoon. And then, I mean, because you got the look you wanted, Alabama's entire defense goes the other way, and you're right, you know, freshman right tackle just gets blown up. You know, on the perimeter there. But the other issue is, again, and this is where context matters, Georgia ran that same play in a very similar, you know, situation against Notre Dame, and it also got blown up in the playoff a year ago. So now to have done that twice inside the 10-yard line on fourth down with Cash Jones, you know, fool me once. What is it? The George Bush, you know, fool me once, can't fool me again. Well, you got fooled again. So let's figure that out, Kirby.
And that, to me, I had no issue. I was rooting for Georgia. I had bet on Georgia, so I was invested there. And when they lined up to go for fourth down, I was happy with the decision, right? Like as a Georgia backer, I was like, hey, go for it, be aggressive, still put in a game. Even if you don't get it, you'll get the ball back. Blah blah blah. But my biggest problem is, like you said, you don't have your best personnel in there. You're reusing a play. And it almost felt like it was contingent on getting to the line quickly and going with pace. And for that reason, I would say I only want to go for fourth downs if I feel like I can line up and get the first down on fourth and short. You know what I mean? Like if you didn't think you could line up and just run the ball and get the first down, if you feel like you have to trick them to do it, then maybe don't do it. Maybe don't put yourself in that position if you don't think you're just good enough to line up and get the play, to line up and get the yards.
Well, it's weird, too, because they went tempo, and yet there actually is almost like a 10-second hesitation there where Gunner's looking at the sidelines and saying, hey, are we going to go? And then it's like, oh, let's go fast so that Bama can't substitute. So it was just, again, it was – you can argue process, result, whatever, but just the way it, you know, completely unfolded, it just didn't seem right.
No, but, you know, the reward there for getting the touchdown, you know, giving them a 4-point lead, it would have been a drastic payoff for a team and a defense that had kind of, you know, shut Alabama down for, you know, that entire third quarter and looks like they could continue to do that, which would lead some people to question, hey, if that's the case, just take the points and let your defense get you the ball back tied versus, you know, having to get them back down 3. It is what it is. Kirby's going to get second guessed, A, because it didn't work out, but B, mostly just because he can't beat Alabama. It's just a block with him, and it seems like every decision he makes, going back to that brain dead, you know, fake punt, fake field goal, whatever it was with Justin Fields, you know, 6, 7 years ago, it just seems like he presses the wrong buttons.
Yeah, I will say this, that the fact that that one win over Alabama's in the national championship is going to go pretty far for him. So
it doesn't feel like it does, though. Like when you look at the online discourse, like I'm not saying Kirby's a fraud.
No.
I'm not saying Kirby, you know, is on the.
But
hot
isn't
seat
that
or
just
nothing.
that's just folks lamenting the moment?
But is that not is perception not reality in those situations? Like, is 1-9, you know, in the last 10 games for Georgia against Alabama? Like that's a big part of the narrative. Now you're right, the national championship, but hell, if I was an Alabama fan, I'd be saying, well, yeah, all it took was our 2 top receivers getting hurt for you to finally beat us. Like that one felt a little lucky, if you will, for Georgia.
I mean, I guess fair enough. I mean, I guess again that may be some Tennessee fan talking, because I think it's pretty easy to also say at the same time, if you're a Georgia backer, hey, we had some dudes hurt the first 2 times we played Bama, and those losses count for Kirby too. So
well, what about the other 7? What about the other 7 though? See, there's a little bit more data on the other side of like, okay, yeah, 2 of them are lucky, but what about the other 6, 7, 8? Either way, like
but that's what I'm saying. It's easy to nitpick all that. But again, a national, you're never going to be able to. I think when cooler heads prevail, when you got a natty as one of those wins, and again, look at Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer's beating everybody. That's part of the reason he got the Alabama job, because he's got a winning record against Sark. He's got a winning record against Dan Lanning. And now, at Alabama, he's 2-0 against Kirby. Now,
he ain't beat
they
Heupel
face
yet,
a heck of a game.
He ain't beat Heupel yet, damn it. He ain't beat everybody. He ain't beat Josh.
Well, he also ain't beat Vandy, and that's going to be a big game this weekend. Can Diego Pavia get revenge? Alabama again. They gave up something like 240 on the ground on Saturday. They got that 1-yard stop that they needed to late in the game. The Cash Jones play that we are just talking about, but it's going to be big. Can they defend that, Vanderbilt run game that Diego Pavia was running wild again this past weekend? So that's going to be, game days there. I think that Alabama's probably going to exact some mean revenge. I don't know how you feel about that game. But I guess we can let that play out.
Well, I mean, that's the game of the weekends, kind of by default, right? Like game days there, and a lot of other teams are on bye. That's kind of ties into what I was asking, though, coming out of it. Like, I don't know what I think about Alabama now. Like, I don't know. Like, I still don't necessarily feel, Jesse, like they're super explosive. So, like, when you tell me, like, kind of take out some revenge, to me, I read that as you saying, you think Alabama's going to win comfortably and make a statement, but I don't know if this Alabama team can run away from an SEC team. Like they didn't run away from Georgia. That they won. I give them credit for that. But like, I don't know. Do we think this offense that has been unable to run the ball and kind of impose their will? Simpson's played well. You're right about that. But like, they're asking him to convert a lot of like 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8s, and that doesn't seem like a big recipe for success. So I could kind of see Vandy hanging around this game, not necessarily winning, but like, holding Alabama under 27 points or so.
Okay, so you actually make a great point there, because I want to kind of clarify something. I don't necessarily mean running away, and here's what and this will go to our Rorschach test for these SEC teams later. I don't think anybody can really run away from anybody. So almost winning impressive can be in the eye of the beholder. What Ole Miss did, I think, on Saturday to LSU, that was not running away with it, but I do think Ole Miss won impressively. And I do think Alabama can do could have a similar type performance against the Vanderbilt team that everyone thinks is now top 15. They're ranked even better in some of the, power rankings, Sagarin metrics, that kind of stuff. So if Alabama goes out there and wins by 10, that's not going to look like an Alabama win over Vandy traditionally. But I think in 2025, John, again, the SEC being the car crash that it is, you win a 10-point game against a top 15, top 20 team. In most cases, that's going to be an impressive victory.
Yeah, no, I mean, for Tennessee to do that, just win by 7 at Mississippi State. I think that was one that most Tennessee fans just looked at and said, you survived, you advanced. That's a game that most teams could lose. You know what I mean? Like any road conference win is impressive. Any road conference win is not going to necessarily need style points. So Tennessee, you combine that with a couple things just going wrong. I mean, I think everyone in Knoxville groaned at the same time and knew what kind of game it was going to be the moment Staley muffed the opening punt. And that kind of just set the tone for, okay, yep, here we go. It's going to be one of those dumb road games that you're going to let this team hang around, and you got to hope you can survive. And Tennessee was able to. And I thought Joey Aguilar, with a really, really impressive performance, despite 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Bad offensive pass interference, bad drop by Mike Matthews kept it from being maybe a 3-touchdown game. And the interceptions, one of them I put on Kitzelman, one of them I put on Joey for kind of throwing it too high and too inside. But either way, like when the chips were down, Tennessee was down 7 in the fourth quarter with 7-8 minutes left. And it was time to show that you could go on a drive and make clutch plays, and Tennessee was able to do that. And, like we said, kind of survive and at least stay alive in this crazy SEC that feels like it's going to be jumbled up. Like, if I ask you right now, over under 3.5, maybe over, let's just call it over under 4, how many teams make it to the end of the regular season and are at least 10-2? Over under 4.
I would say over 4.
Yeah, it feels it said it that way, right? Which is crazy for a playoff pitcher. Like, it feels like it's going to be a very convoluted playoff pitcher, especially when you add some of the ACC teams in there, like Georgia Tech, who survived, and Notre Dame, who's got it set up perfectly to go 10-2 and run the table. Like, it's going to be a jumbled mess, I think.
Yeah, and in terms of the playoff, I think, I predicted before the season that the SEC could get 5. And I actually think that's still on track, ironically. And yet the SEC, you could see a scenario, John, where the SEC does not or is not one of the top 4 seeds, and yet does have basically almost all those teams, 5 through whatever, filling out, basically 5 through 12, filling out, I think, maybe 4 or 5 of those spots.
Yeah, like 3. You can see 3 or 4 SEC teams hosting home games on campus.
Exactly, and part of that is I think because of this whole, like, each week they're just knocking each other off, and it's just one wreck after another. Well, if you have all these 10-2 teams or 10-3 teams, but they're going to have all these ranked wins, the ACC, I think ultimately, is just going to kind of eat themselves. Where it may just be one team standing there in terms of having the actual resume. The Big 12, ironically, because that conference is so weak, that there's a chance that if you have like an undefeated Texas Tech and an 11-1 Utah, and Utah is able to exact revenge, they could obviously both get in. But still lots to play out here, lots to play out. I will ask you one thing about Joey A. Are you at all concerned, in terms of, the Rorschach test with Tennessee? Are we concerned that, what do we see here with that in terms of the last 3 weeks? Obviously, what he did against Georgia was extremely impressive, but he did have the 2 picks. Those bugaboo, interceptions kind of creeping back into the Joey A narrative, whereas that was one of the, I think, preseason concerns just because he threw so many damn picks at App State.
Yeah, I got to say, I don't see the interception problems just because. Okay. Maybe it's me, orange-colored glasses. Maybe it's me, like, hey, this is my new lover. Pause, but you get the idea. Like, new relationship. You're just so happy to have somebody that makes you feel alive. That's throwing the ball down the field. That's so different than the last person you had last year with Nico, who maybe didn't turn the ball over, but it's because he was throwing the ball in the dirt or throwing it too far down the field. I'm going to make an excuse for my man. I'm going to say, of the 2 interceptions against Georgia, one of them, I feel like, was the wide receiver falling down. I thought Staley kind of fell down and kind of left him hanging on a slant. Had another one that was dropped by Georgia, but I think we all said, hey, you can live with 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions if you're being explosive on offense again. And he was against Georgia. Against Mississippi State, I thought really there's a very realistic game that played out there, Jesse, where Mike Matthews catches the ball and Brazel doesn't get called for pass interference. And next thing you know, he has thrown for 450 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Kitzelman hangs on to a short pass. And, I'll give him 1 interception, but like 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 450 yards was firmly on the table. So, like, I graded him at like a 90 out of 100 for the Mississippi State game, which might sound crazy when you look at only 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, but I'm giving some extra points there for that clutch, game-tying drive where he's making plays while getting tackled and getting out of the pocket and keeping plays alive. I think Tennessee fans are head over heels right now with Joey Aguilar and, get the bye week, continue to get healthier on defense, and I think people are ready for a pretty fun October. that goes, along with what we're talking about with Alabama and whether or not we're buying them as kind of being back at the top of the food chain just because that's Tennessee's toughest game. I think coming out of the early parts of the season, Tennessee was confident about their chances to go in there and get a road win. And now I do wonder, if that's going to be the case with how they looked against Georgia. But we're talking about this. Say it for me. Rorschach test. Is that how you say it?
The Rorschach test.
The Rorschach.
Kind of
Rorschach.
It's a famous. It's all in the eye of the beholder. So
this is like therapy, right? This is whenever you see the butterfly and the blots and the
exactly.
Okay, I actually have our video. Gosh, shout out to Zach. He's made some. Jesse, you probably won't be able to actually see them, but we took some logos, we smushed them in. He says okay. He says he can get them up. Let's see if we can get them up. Let's see what he can do here. Let's see if we can get it because I put some work in here, Jesse. I got you some actual things to look at. If we can get it, let's give him a second. This is on the fly. Let's see what he's got. Can you see that?
Oh, there we go. Yes, I can sort of see it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little blurry, but okay.
What do you see when you see that? That's the point. It's supposed to be blurry. What do you see when you see those blots? All right, I'm going to give you a hint. That's Tennessee. There's the Riflemen and the Vols. All right.
Oh, there we go. I like it. Okay. Tennessee, Riflemen and the Vols. There you go.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that's the Vols. So, Jesse, what do you see when you see the Tennessee Vols? What type of team? What type of feeling? What's your takeaway?
Well, my takeaway is if Tyree West is going to suddenly turn into Reggie White, you gotta like their defensive line upside. When everyone thought that was going to be I think a unit that maybe took a little bit of a step back. If you get Gerard McCoy back here soon, you start really getting a little healthier in the secondary. I see a team that it seems fully capable of being 10-2 and being one of those 5 SEC teams potentially to make the college football playoff. How about you?
Was that Tyree West play not one of the best defensive plays? Like, this is one of the smoothest, coolest plays. Just an absolute blindside head knocker that was completely legal. The quarterback goes down, the ball's just sitting there, and then your other stud defensive lineman just picks it up and races away. Like, to me, that was just such a cool play, especially after a quote-unquote momentum swing of a fake punt working. I thought that was just such a nice play.
The blindside sack fumble is always one of the best plays, if not the best plays in football. It especially when it looks like that, when it's almost cinema, when it's just bang, hits the turf, ball sits there, buddy goes and gets it, touchdown. You're dancing for 6 on the other end. Yeah, that's I love it.
Yeah, I feel like usually you see the ball bounce like 6 or 7 yards away. Like that one just fell directly to the ground and just was there perfectly to be picked up. That's the first play I fell in love with. I do think that's my favorite football play just because my most impressionable years, shout out to the freak, Javon Curse. Just watching Javon Curse just get strip sack after strip sack his rookie year with the Titans, the year they went to the Super Bowl. Like that's my favorite type of play. You talk about the defense and, maybe nationally, Jesse, the perception of Tennessee's defensive line was really low. But I think in Knoxville, people were just holding out hope that as long as you have Rodney Garner on the staff, that everything is going to work out, that he is going to continue to develop dogs. And there was a bunch of 4 and 5 stars on there. Like you saw it with Josephs, like you saw it with a freshman, Isaiah Campbell out there, the development of Tyree West. They just were going to have good defensive line play. I think Tim Banks and Garner have kind of earned that benefit of the doubt. But to me, the big key here, and as I look at this picture here, this blurry picture, I too see the path to a playoff team just because I think we're 2 weeks away from Tennessee having what people are calling 2 first-round picks at your cornerback position. Getting Jermod McCoy back to pair him up with Colton Hood, who's been a revelation. I saw both those guys mocked as first-round picks. I just think that completely changes the trajectory of your defense because right now Tennessee's weakness is the middle of the field. But if you tell me you have 2 shutdown corners, that means you should be able to put all your other resources. Your safety play should get better. your linebacking play should get better because you should be able to focus all those extra guys there and trust that your front five, I call it a front five because Tennessee likes to send one extra guy. You're going to have 4 plus 1, and then you're going to have your corners out there on an island, and hopefully everybody else can patrol the middle of the field and take that defense and kind of get it nationally on track, when it comes to scoring defense and making plays.
Yeah, I mean, it should free up, to allow Banks to kind of get creative with Boo Carter, right? If you have your more traditional guys out there, you can kind of move him around in the secondary. I think ideally it would also help alleviate maybe some of Tennessee's concerns at linebackers. So I think we both see Tennessee as a right now. What do you see? I see them as a potential playoff team, but I also think that it's not hard to envision, just because of how rocky some of the up and down, I guess, these teams have been, that, if you lose it at Alabama, and then, what happens when you got to then go again on the road? Where is Florida going to be, come the end of November? So there's certainly some plenty of tricky spots for the Vols, but at least where they're standing right now, I think vis-a-vis the rest of the SEC, they got to feel pretty good.
All right, switching to test number 2. Well, let's get something else on the screen. Okay, we're good. All right, Jesse, what do you see here?
Oh, here we go. I see a little Texas Longhorn.
Okay, what do you see here besides those Longhorns when you look at this image right here?
I put this in my September superlatives piece up at Substack at Surrender Cobra, but I'm getting the it's kind of the leaves are hopefully starting to change around here. It's going to be fall, some new smells. Everyone's into their pumpkin spices, but I'm getting a fainting whiff of fraud from Texas.
Fraud for Texas, okay?
Yeah, and I mean that from preseason expectations, where they were pretty universally, John. I think if you tallied up, the number of national media folks who picked Texas to win the national championship versus an Alabama, versus Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Penn State, Oregon, whoever, I think Texas easily got the most votes. And they may finish, somewhere in the top 10 and win some big games this fall. But they look nothing like a national championship team yet to me. They have not played an SEC game yet, which is notable. They're making their SEC season debut Saturday in Gainesville against, a zombie Florida team that is either going to die or maybe going to, fight the fight one last time for Billy. So I just don't, what do we know about Texas? Well, we know that, Arch Manning certainly doesn't seem to look or be the quarterback that everyone presumed him to be. And I love the guys on defense. I love Colin Simmons. I love, the back end with McAfee, and they got Malik Muhammad. They have, they're just dudes on dudes on dudes. Anthony Hill at linebacker. But if you can't score, and Texas has issues with Arch and anticipation and timing and what have you, they're a little bit down on their receiver core. They don't like their running backs because all these guys keep getting hurt. I don't know. To me, if you were going to be the number 1 team in the country, it just kind of a whiff of fraud to me.
To me, it just comes down to, is this our perception on Texas, or is this our perception on Arch Manning? Because to me, they're just so intertwined. They're the same thing. If Texas gets a little bit better quarterback play, do you think they're still frauds? Because that's what I'm asking myself. And there's part of me that says, hey, Ohio State's defense, it's nasty. And they made Arch look silly week 1. And pretty much nothing Arch could do from the first game until now would have changed my perception on that. He's got a chance on Saturday against Florida in the Swamp, against another top-level defense, to kind of change the narrative a little bit. Texas 7-point favorites. Jesse, do you think that Billy Napier and his offense can give that defense any help? Do you think Florida wins this game, or do you think they're looking at 1-4 with Texas getting a nice SEC road win?
Yeah, I think I would say I think Florida could win on Saturday. I would not probably pick them to win because at this point, Billy has given you little optimism or reason to pick them. But I mean, like, again, from my perspective, in terms of you believing, the comments are intertwined, it's not wrong. But that's why, again, it's to me, it's based on what everyone presumed Texas to be to what they actually are. I think this situation, John, would be very similar to kind of almost like what Penn State faced a week ago, where the reality of the situation is obviously different. One being on the road, one having to, getting to have the whiteout at home. But I thought coming out of that game that if Penn State won 14 or 17-14, James Franklin would obviously have the big monkey off his back in terms of top six, all the horrible record versus top six teams, yada, yada, yada. But I don't think it would have changed the perception or my belief that Penn State could actually win a national title with Drew Aller at quarterback. If you can only score 17 points at home, again, whiteout, whatever. I think if Texas goes into Florida on Saturday and they win a game in similar circumstances, 17-14, 21-17, whatever, it's an ugly game where Florida's offense still struggles. Texas is defense dominates, and Arch is just meh, then I think that's kind of going to tell us that that's just kind of who Texas is this year. That, Arch, because they're going to face some really other good defenses, John. Texas has, they got, A&M, put the clamps on Auburn. I think Texas also plays Missouri. They got to go to Athens. So the SEC slate is just starting for them. So if they don't, show some, something offensively, especially coming off, 2 weeks, a bye week, what have you, and they just are wholly relying on their defense again, I think that's just kind of what the Longhorns are going to be in 2025.
At Florida, neutral site Oklahoma, at Kentucky, at Mississippi State,
is nasty.
Vanderbilt, at Georgia, Arkansas, A&M. When you see Texas, you see a blank win team, Jesse.
I see a 9-win team.
9-3, okay. Next up, can you see it, Jesse? I
can.
Okay.
It looks like an OU.
That's right. So when you see that, it makes you think of what? What? How does it make you feel inside?
Well, it looks like that U is on fire. For me, from my end, it looks like there's like some flames
Is the fire good? Is it like, hey, things are good, they're on fire, like NBA Jam? Or is it, oh no, it's on fire, things are going poorly, we got to get out of the building? Which fire are you seeing when you see the OU?
I think the wagon may be engulfed in flames.
Oh no, the bad type of fire.
Here's the deal, John. Oklahoma's ranked in number 5 right now, I think. I think there's something like that, 5, 6. They're way up there. John Mateer is hurt. They can't run the ball. And they have Texas, they got Red River, they got Kent State on Saturday. So you're going to get your Slappy out of the way. Hopefully Michael Hawkins, the freshman from a year ago who was kind of thrown into the fire, so to speak, against Tennessee. And that did not go well. And then he kind of struggled, until he ultimately lost his job back to, Jackson Arnold. I think Oklahoma could be in for some pain here over the next month. Their schedule's about to get super gnarly. Their defense is awesome. Venables has absolutely fixed that side of the ball, I think, with some of the transfers. This trio of defensive linemen led by Stone, that former 5-star, they're nasty. They get after it. That's probably the best interior pass rush, I think, in the country. I think Miami still probably has the best defensive line unit as a whole in the nation, but I think Oklahoma's right there. So that's going to keep them in the games, but I'm just skeptical that Hawkins is going to be able to do all that much. John Mateer also, is an added element of this, John. This is not a secret, but obviously everyone knows this. but he came over with Ben Arbuckle, from Washington State. That was a package deal. So he already knew this offense. And then they're basically running this one-man band, brigade where he is doing everything. He's making all the trick shot throws. He's having to make all the running game plays. And so to now take out that element of your superstar quarterback who's going to miss a month and then put in a guy who struggled mightily in a different system a year ago, I'm just skeptical that Oklahoma is going to be able to keep the good times rolling.
You see a blank win team with Oklahoma.
Without their schedule being pulled up right in front of me, I'm going to say...
Stand by. Hold on. Stand by. I'll get it. 1 second. Kent State, Texas, at South Carolina, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama, Missouri, LSU.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could be talking about a 7-5. I'll say 8-4. I'll say 8-4. I'll say 8-4.
7-5. The fire might get Brent Venables if he goes 7-5. Because that would be that would be, if you go 7-5, that would be them going 2-5 after this Kent State game. Oof,
John, you just named. I think you just named 4 top 10 teams, 4 or 5, or 4 or 5 top 15 team wherever Tennessee's ranked. Plus, South Carolina might be the white knuckle team of the SEC, where they make their fans nervous and they'll make the other team nervous because they can score on special teams. They'll get a defensive touchdown every now and again. And if Lenora Sellers is healthy, he is able to put on a Superman cape on a given Saturday. It's not going to happen every Saturday. It may not happen the Saturday that you play him, but if you do happen to play him on that Saturday, he'll get you.
South Carolina's going to get somebody good this year for sure, and you didn't even mention Missouri, who is also a.
Well, they're in that top 10, aren't they? Aren't they? They're ranked around there somewhere? Top 15.
I think Missouri's still holding on at 19. So, but you were right already. Okay. Texas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, and LSU. That's 5 top 15 teams plus Missouri and South Carolina. That's pretty stout.
I would not rule out 7-5. Especially what happens if Mateer comes back or he comes back, gets hurt again, or what happens if his hand surgery deal takes longer to heal. I don't know. So I'll say 8-4 just to be conservative, but that's what I see right now.
With 7-5, I mean Venables would survive that with that schedule, right? Like you don't fire a coach.
I think he would
7-5 against that schedule,
and he's going to get some grace since Mateer got hurt.
That's true. I wonder at what point Mateer comes back. Do you have any insight there or any thoughts on how long he's going to be out? I know you've been talking about an outside chance he'd be back for Texas.
I see no chance. I think the earliest they probably have circled is that South Carolina game, but it's probably the week after that.
Yeah.
I would think if he's actually out a month, then it's going to be something like that.
With his NFL future, I wonder how quickly you risk it if you're him. That'll be a big storyline to watch over the next couple of weeks. All right, next up on the test, the Worcestershire sauce test, the Rochester. I still don't know what the hell it's called, but I know what you're talking about. All right, who we got up here?
Worcestershire, I like that.
Yeah,
you got a little dab of Worcestershire sauce with a side of a Rorschach.
All right, what do you see here, Jesse?
Oh,
Squint.
Man, what do I see here?
How does it make you feel?
So what mascot am I looking at here?
I'm not 100% positive here, and I think I even know what the hell the answer's supposed to be. Is that Ugga? Is that Ugga smushed down?
Oh, is that what that is? Ugga smush? Okay.
Is that the G? Is that okay? The G.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is that's Ugga. That's Ugga with a flat nose. It's Ugga with he got not a clown nose, but his nose got punched. Well, he got punched in the nose.
I also see a little bit of a Holstein cow there too, looking at me. A cow, I could see that maybe, but you know how those damn bulldogs are. They're already ugly enough. Zach, you didn't have to do that to Ugga. What do you see, Jesse, when you see Georgia?
Yeah, we've spent plenty of time on Georgia already. I think I see a flawed team that certainly isn't the 2021 or I guess you would say 2020 to 2023, Bulldogs. I see a team that it clearly is gonna bite you every Saturday, though, because even when they come out and give up a 14-point deficit or 21-7 like they were against Tennessee, they will, kind of scratch and claw and grunt their way back into the game. Can they finish? To be determined. They get a reprieve, I think this weekend, getting to play probably the worst team in the SEC in Kentucky.
How bad is Kentucky? My God.
Man, they got if Georgia's a little bit of a dog with fleas, I think right now Kentucky is just like they're homeward bound, man. That is a sad, sickly situation.
Oh, Peter.
Sad, sickly situation.
Like Shadow just trying to get out of that mud pit. I don't know. That goes along with the Alabama-Georgia game we talked about. I don't know because I watched Georgia make every big play. I watched them come into Neyland Stadium. But, outside of those 2 quarters against Tennessee that they dominated, I haven't been overly impressed, in neither one of their bought wins against, Marshall and Austin Peay. And, I thought against Alabama they looked like a team that would just shoot themselves in the foot, and all of a sudden Gunnar Stockton wasn't the quarterback that I saw him be in Knoxville. So, I really don't know with Georgia, and I don't think we're going to learn anything about them, this week against Kentucky. Maybe we get a little bit more of real data as they go to Auburn. Maybe. But I'm going to run through their schedule. You tell me how many wins you see. Kentucky, Auburn, at Auburn, Mississippi, at neutral site against Florida, at Mississippi State, Texas, Charlotte, and at Georgia Tech. You see a what-win team?
I mean, I thought coming into the season, Georgia was probably a 10-2 team. I would probably still lean that way. But 9-3 is certainly on the table.
Yeah.
If they play the way they did, at times against Tennessee and Alabama on Saturday. So it's, the defensive line is just not where it has been the last few seasons. And I think that's a big part of their, defensive demise. But then at the same time, they came up with the stops that they need to, against Tennessee. They came up with the stops they needed to against Alabama. And it was, the offense not finishing drives, getting stuck in the red zone.
I got to say,
and that's on.
My PTSD just flared up. I didn't think they got the stops against Tennessee they needed, honestly. I feel like they scored when they needed. Gunnar Stockton scored that 4th and 8 really good, or 4th and 6, whatever it was, really good. The missed field goal because Heupel decided to run the ball instead of trying to keep pushing. I don't know if that defense, I'm giving them credit for getting the stops they needed, but maybe that's just me being bitter.
The middle of the game, in the middle of the game, they did.
Yeah.
That's the only reason they came back in that game. In the middle of the game, Tennessee had whatever from, the end of the first quarter or whatever through the middle of the third quarter. I mean, Tennessee had a bunch of just kind of empty drives. So that it had, one half dozen the other. We've seen kind of all of Georgia's fleas, I think, and now it's, can they get the whatever it is that you give your dogs to give that to get it away, or is it going to kind of continue to bother them all season? We'll see.
All right, next one, and then maybe I'll let you do a wild card. This is the last picture I got prepared for you, and by I mean that Zach's got prepared for you. So let's go, Zach. Next one up. When you see this, you see what?
Oh, I see. I see a tiger that looks like it got its eyes gouged out.
Fitting. I too see a tiger that got its eyes gouged out and didn't have much of an offense to inflict any pain on their opponents. That's what I see when I look at LSU.
Yep, we're seeing the same thing here. Our therapist linked up apparently on this one.
You said fraud when you see Texas. I feel like I've seen fraud when I've seen LSU the entire season. I don't see it with them.
I see no fun. I'll use it. It's you talk about a team that just looks miserable. I mean, Brian Kelly always looks miserable, but the fact that LSU plays an offense. Or LSU plays a brand of football that is excruciating to watch. They play an offensive style right now with plenty of talent that is unbearable to watch. And Brian Kelly is easily the most unlikable coach probably in the country, but then Bobby Petrino now is a head coach in the SEC again. So does not only Kelly maybe fall to number 2 in the SEC, but in the country as well. So he has that going for him. Other than that, there's not a lot of things to be excited about for the Tigers right now. Blake Baker has that defense rolling. Trinidad Chambliss was my Lebowski of September. He's the dude of the month for me. But even then, I mean, LSU gave him, some things to some challenges on Saturday, but the offense is just so bad. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, you might as well call him, Garrett, Quinn Quinn Meyer, because he looks like Quinn Ewers from last year, where his arm is just completely shot. And if he's going to play, it can't be an excuse, So I understand if he is hurt, if it's like a record with a scratch on it, you either decide that you need to play that record or you put a new one on. So if LSU isn't going to go to Van Buren, the Mississippi State transfer, then if Nussmeier is going to keep throwing these hospital balls, then you're just living with that. And the offense is just, I don't know about you, but I tweeted this on Saturday. It is unbelievable to me, John, that LS freaking U doesn't have like a 5-star running back or just some dude at tailback. This is a program that has routinely churned out awesome dudes back there. Caden Duran's hurt, but he's just like fine. He's not like some, all SEC guy, in my opinion. And they got nobody else, and they don't even try to run the ball. And so when you don't try to run the ball and your quarterback basically has a busted arm, it's just a recipe for disaster. So no wonder Tiger fans and Bingle the Tiger here are gouging their eyes out, because it's pretty much unwatchable at this point. And this is about a team we're talking about, John, that's 4-1 and ranked somewhere in the top 15.
I will say, though, that Clemson win doesn't carry nearly as much weight anymore. The ugly Florida win doesn't carry a whole lot of weight, and it just – Ole Miss was the more physical team.
They.
Yeah, and Ole Miss was the more physical team and just kind of handled them. I never really thought LSU was going to win that game from the moment it kicked off. So, like, that to me was pretty telling. The rest of their schedule, South Carolina at Vandy, Texas A&M at Alabama, Arkansas, Western Kentucky at Oklahoma. You see a blank win team.
Yeah, I mean, this just screams 9-3 to me. Their defense is good enough to single-handedly, I think, win them some games. And Brian Kelly, writ large over the course of his career, does have a very impressive record. So I don't think this is some team that's going to totally just go into the tank. But because if you can't score like Texas, it's going to limit your upside. And I think, Texas's offense probably has a higher ceiling than LSU's right now. But this is, again, it's amazing, John, that going into this season, everyone had Nussmeier, penciled in as the top 5 pick, one of the Heisman favorites. Everyone loved all these receivers. They brought in more transfers. You got Anderson in his second season, C.J. Daniels, all these guys. It has not mattered. The offensive line stinks. They can't run the ball. And again, Nuss's arm just looks shot. And so I don't know what they're going to do offensively.
Yeah, that season finale, them versus Oklahoma, is going to be such an interesting vibes game, because I think both teams are going to kind of stumble down the stretch there. That game might be the difference between 8-4 and 7-5, and finishing the season on somewhat of a high note versus like really spiraling if you lose that one. So that's my takeaway from looking at that schedule is like, yeah, you're probably right. I think 9-3 feels a little high. I just don't like this team. I would probably go more of 8-4 with a big game with Oklahoma to end the season where somebody's going to come out devastated.
Yeah.
All right, Jesse, anything else? Any other teams you want to get on record? Any takes you want to get on record, either about Week 5 or looking ahead to Week 6?
I guess my one team that is, kind of quietly just continuing to win, not particularly impressive, but they got a nice crooked number now next to their name too in the top 10 is Texas A&M. And they play, Mississippi State coming off, a tough loss to Tennessee on Saturday. A&M's back at home. they were not overly impressive against Auburn. They could not finish drives. They killed Jackson Arnold. That defensive line had the best game they've had all season for sure. But is that, again, more of the Tigers? Is that the Aggies? Marcel Reed, he seems to be doing really well in terms of, moving you through the 20s, but that offense just stalled in the red zone on Saturday. So who are these Aggies? They're not the Aggies of your daddy's past, because we've seen them win games that I think they absolutely would have lost. They would have lost against Notre Dame, if this was, one of these Jimbo teams or one of these Kevin Sumlin teams. They would have lost to Notre Dame. They would have found a way to lose that game. Probably would have found a way to lose to Auburn last weekend, frankly, but they didn't, so they're unscathed. So I'm just curious for another data point. Again, a lot of SEC teams on buys. We'll be able to watch some of these other teams a little bit this weekend. Another data point for A&M, kind of something that has my attention going into this weekend.
The Notre Dame game point, I think, is completely fair. That's a game they would have lost. I give them credit for that. I still am going to be slow to change my mind on them. And it's not fair to this iteration of the team, but hell, even that Auburn game, it seemed like they were struggling to put away that team. And to me,
for sure.
And it
That's
feels,
what I'm saying.
yeah, and it feels like a top 10 team is supposed to do that at home. If it was at Auburn, that's a completely different story. But the fact they couldn't run away from Auburn, the fact that they, I didn't think looked overly impressive against UTSA or Utah State. Like, I'm still holding out a lot of judgment for them. When you look at the rest of their schedule, Mississippi State, Florida, at Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri, South Carolina, Samford, at Texas, you see a blank win team.
Probably 10-2. They have among the more favorable schedules, when compared to what you've already rattled off for some of these other teams.
Sure.
Look at it. They take care of business this weekend. Then you're going to be favored again next weekend. So, you're heading into mid-October potentially unscathed. But then you do have the Missouri, the Texas,
LSU.
LSU.
Those are three tough road games.
And then again, you mentioned, like South Carolina could come in and snipe you. So there are games where you could see some L's on that schedule, but at the same time, I do think there's plenty of wins left over for the Aggies, to finally kind of crack that playoff, ceiling that they've yet to bust through.
I think I'm taking the under. If you're telling me 10, I think I'd go 9-3. I feel like that's a team that
okay.
I have them as one of the odd teams out of the SEC playoff race. That's how I feel about them when I see the imaginary picture of Texas A&M. All right, Jesse, tell the people where they can read your work. I'll compliment it again. I love getting the emails just straight there. Ain't got to worry about going to the website and check it. Boom, subscribe. It hits in the email. I can read the whole article there. Love myself some Surrender Cobra.
Yeah, man. Find Surrender Cobra at Substack. You can directly subscribe there. You can find it on Twitter at Jesse R.E. Simonton. Hit the link. Yeah, had a big September superlatives piece come out on Monday that kind of looking at week 5, a little bit of review, but also the month as a whole. So kind of some fun stuff with a bunch of pop culture references in there for categories. Got the Nelly team of the month, who is number 1. I got like I said, the September Lebowski, a bunch of other stuff. So subscribe, certainly to that, but absolutely for the Slow Mesh pod here with John Reed as well.
Hey, shout out to Zach Elliott as well for helping us with some graphics as we try
Appreciate it, Zach.
Up the presentation here. Try to get some social media cutouts and stuff. If you listen to it wherever you get your podcasts, do consider going to watch it on YouTube and showing us some love there as well. All right, Jesse, I'll talk to you next week, brother. Have a good one.
See you, man. You too.